here in Sheridan, Oregon, interviewing the three Chindgren sisters. And it's 2004, and we just are going to learn a little bit about their history and about their lives growing up in Molalla, Oregon. So we're going to start with, I guess, the oldest, and just say how old you are now and when your birthday is.
I'm the oldest, Beverly June. I was born in 1930, November 5th, so now I'm 73 years old.
I'm the middle child, Carolee and Chindgren Berntsen, and I am 66 years old. I was born September 24th, 1937.
Judith Lynn, just had a birthday June 28th, and I'm 62.
Okay, let's start by you guys telling us a little bit about your mom and dad, giving us a context of who they are and maybe where they met and maybe where they grew up.
Well, I'm the oldest, so maybe I know more about that ancient history. From what they said, my dad was our dad was quite a, I wouldn't want to say ladies' man, but eligible bachelor for quite a while, because he was 14 years older than our mother. And
Did they meet at church?
probably with they had a really strong youth group that would go up to Bagsby Hot Springs, and they do all kinds of things. It seemed like the whole community were Colton Lutheran Church members at that time. And yes, they went to the same church, and Mother was out of high school. She was going to go to the normal school, that's the teacher's college, and I think she was only there for, do you know, Carolee, how long?
Months.
Yeah, like
No.
a term or so, and her mother had a stroke, and so she had to quit school, and she took care of her mother, Eva Palmgren.
And they went to Portland to be near a doctor for Grandma. And Mom worked as domestic, and she learned a lot from people named Ferris. And when they were married, they gave her nice silver and things, so they thought a lot of her. And I'm not sure if Grandma lived there in that household too, but I think maybe she did.
I kind of thought maybe she did. And there were Trevitts was another name.
Trevitts. What did I say?
Ferris, but there were two.
Were there?
Yeah, there was, and don't ask me how.
Yeah.
But
Anyway, she learned a lot about cooking that wasn't purely immigrant Scandinavian, and she was a very good cook.
And were they Swedish?
Yes, all of our grandparents were born in Sweden except our grandma Chindgren, who was
born
Born-
in Pennsylvania.
of Swedish immigrants.
I think the church was kind of the social life of people then. And
Meadowbrook, where the Chindgren family lived, was a large farm with everything, mills and barns and granary and houses for the pigs and the chickens. And the horses were very special. Our father helped import a Percheron horse stallion one time. But the church was 5 miles away in Colton. So they'd take a horse and buggy to Colton to church.
Do you remember that?
We don't, we have pictures.
Oh, when they were.
When they were young.
Yeah. Okay.
I think they came to Oregon The Chindgrens did in 1909, and I think the Palmgrens, mother's side, came in 1916.
And they lived around Colton area, the Palmgrens did.
Yeah, and our grandfather was a blacksmith, the blacksmith,
On which side?
mother's side.
The Palmgrens.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember him making sled runners for a sled that our father had. Horses would pull the sled to go up and get wood in the wintertime on the back 40, and we'd swoosh through the mud and the grass and the water, and Socks and Jerry would pull the wood home. And they also, with other farm horses, did the farming.
To about what year did horses do the farming?
On that farm until about the 40s, and then
Late 40s, because
Late.
I was getting up in years, carrying water to the hayers and things, so I was old enough to.
yeah, things really changed when the Second World War came, and the Chindgrens came in 1909, and I think with the idea they were going to be big farmers. Our grandfather Chindgren developed some kind of wheat even. He was
Experimental
yeah,
in agriculture.
and they bought, looking through the records, they bought all kinds of machinery. They had one of the only thrashing machines in the surrounding community, and so they would do thrashing for people. And then the war came, and our father was training, but he never went into this actual service. He was in, I don't know what they called it. It was like a National Guard or something. And the uncles, Reuben and Ben, were overseas.
And
They
they
served
were
in
on
France.
a ship, the Tuscania, that was sunk, and they were both rescued. But Uncle Ben led singing, and I think Reuben helped too. They were in the Glee Club at Oregon State, and good singers, and they kept up the morale of the other people.
Was this World War One?
Yes.
World War One.
Uncle Ben was nicknamed the Singing Sergeant.
And they had an older brother, Milton, who was, I think, too old to be drafted, and he had his
He was married.
family by then. Vivian and Irene and Laura, whom you know.
So, your dad was what did he do for a living?
Well, he was kind of left on when the war was over. The grandfather had died, and the rest of the family, I don't know, they had a sister, Mabel. She had died in her early 20s.
Of TB.
Yeah. And our father was just kind of left while the others went to school to run the farm. But he wasn't...
Didn't have his mind or his heart in farm. He loved agriculture, and
Yeah.
he was on the agriculture committee while in the state legislature for many years. And he fought the battle of the farmers, but he didn't have time to farm because he was interested in the community efforts and the community interests.
Really interested in the youth, in the Luther League and
4-H.
4-H, and yeah.
And Camp Colton was a huge part of our growing up.
And when they were young, I don't know, I can remember them, my mom and dad, I think because I'm so much older than my sisters, they had a lot of fun. It seemed like in later years, I don't know, things weren't weren't as carefree or something. I think it was always, finances were always, this money was always short. But of course, I grew up in the Depression, and we just stayed poor. But we didn't have running water or indoor plumbing, and farmed with horses, so it was another era.
And most people had running water and indoor plumbing and farmed with tractors. So we were like a generation throwback in a lot of ways, the way we lived.
So when did you get running water?
When,
Bev married Bill.
but before I married Bill.
So
Oh, was it?
About
He
what,
helped.
what year?
Oh, I was still in grade school.
It was the 50.
40, probably, we got it probably 49, don't you think?
Around there.
It was about the time we were engaged.
But we first had just a cold water faucet in the kitchen.
And one outside. I thought it was just outside for a while.
I don't remember that.
And how about indoor toilet?
I was in college.
So in the 50s.
Mm-hmm. Bill put that in. We would go to Luther League Camp, which was for whole families. And we'd stay there at Camp Colton for a week in a tent. And then as we got older, we all worked at the camp also, and our father managed it for a while. And Mom worked in the kitchen too, and she was registrar for years for all the camps.
She was really good at keeping track of the money and everything for all the campers and the people that would come in to buy their meals. She was like the accountant.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a paid position?
No, nothing was paid.
It seems, yeah. And then we did all that every member Bible thing. That was probably later. And I'd type all these letters. We were trying to get inactive members to either be active and pay money or something, or not be active. I don't know. Every member visitation.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so, yeah, it seemed like most of the things we did didn't
Didn't involve
yeah, we didn't earn any money doing it.
And Dad was a 4-H club leader and active in Farm Bureau. And
Grange.
And he ran the Grange Fair in Colton. He ran the Literary Club in Meadowbrook. And we met once a month and had poems and plays and community singing and quizzes.
And guest performers. And
Yes, like fiddlers and pianists, and everybody in the community came unless they were recluses
To your house?
to the school.
Oh, to the school.
a 2-room country school.
So that's the school you guys went to?
Yes. It became 3 rooms when I was there.
And did you have indoor plumbing when you
Yeah.
were there?
Yeah, I don't know if not the whole time, but when we got that 3rd room, I think they had a man, a girl, and a boy's added to it. It was kind of like a modern extra room.
I think that was there when the end of my schooling. But before that, you would go outside and kind of down the hill a little bit past the play shed to the outhouses. 2-holers for the girls and 2-holer for the boys. I think. I was never in the boys.
That was good.
And the ball diamond was on the hill too.
Well, a slant.
A
Just a
slant.
slant.
Yeah.
But we had a play shed, I mean,
With
a
good,
big structure. It had walls and a roof, so we could play basketball and prison ball, which is like dodgeball.
Roller skating there.
and the
So it
school.
had some grooves on the floor for
Yeah.
roller skating.
No windows or anything. just open air.
Okay.
And our house was, what would you think, about a quarter of a mile, a little more from school, up a hill, across the bridge. And this hill, when it snowed, was great for sledding. So that was a lot of fun in
And
the
y-
winter time.
And you had to go across Milk Creek?
Yes.
And Milk Creek was wonderful in the summer just to play.
But the bridge
And
was
swim.
always there, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
For you?
And your land went up to the creek too, right?
And
both sides.
and so when we went to get wood, for instance, we had to cross the creek, and our cows would go at will across the creek. And so often we had to go get them. It'd take a long time to round them up, and many, many acres of pasture and bushes.
So did you guys have to work a lot?
Medium.
Yeah.
But it wasn't structured. It
no.
wasn't like we had a list of chores we had to do. I just remember my mean sisters making me wash dishes when Mom and Dad left.
And I imagine I was pretty mean because I wanted to boss them, and I
She
did.
did.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
So how much? What are your age difference?
I'm 7 years older than Carolee.
And I'm 5 years older than Judy.
Pretty big spread.
Yes.
And of course, with this no plumbing, we also had a wood stove we had to keep going and heat the water and everything. So that involved some work. Everything involved more work, carrying the water and dishes.
Cutting, kindling, that was my favorite job.
Yeah. And sometimes we'd have to set up the sawhorses, or they'd usually just be there, and use a crosscut saw and saw the lengths and then split them.
So tell me about the type of food you ate and who cooked it and what mealtime was like.
We always ate together.
I remember.
Except breakfast. Breakfast
Yeah.
was spotty, at least when I was growing up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, our father cooked mush in the morning and would insist that you eat before you left. So I really didn't care for any kind of mush very much.
It was always
He relaxed when we got older.
oatmeal or cream of wheat.
Yeah. But I remember,
And he'd fry Spam.
oh yeah, with
For
brown
breakfast?
sugar.
Not necessarily breakfast, but
Mm.
now and then, I guess when Mom would have her headaches or whatever, be sick,
Yeah,
he would be in charge of meals. It would be fried Spam with brown sugar on it.
and a can of peas.
Yeah.
Well, square meal.
And we had peas quite a bit. Scandinavians seems like thrive on peas. And we had eggs. Our chickens just ran around.
Loose.
And so you'd have to find the nests and visit these hollows in trees and things like that to go gather the eggs when they were laying.
But we always had milk and eggs. We always had at least one cow milking. I like to milk cows. I learned to milk cows when I was 4.
I was 5.
Oh, okay. Judy, did you ever milk?
Probably not, except your cow when you were on vacation. I don't think I did it at home.
So who on the evening meal who would cook?
Mother.
Mom.
And what's some of the meals you remember?
Cream peas.
Squash.
I remember
Rootamoose.
Yeah.
rootamoose, but I remember really good fried chicken on
Yes.
Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we'd have to catch the chicken and kill it, hang it up overnight or for a few hours, and then pick the feathers off, scald it, and pick the feathers off.
And I do
Mother
not
did the
like
butchering.
that Mom killed the chickens?
No, he
He
killed them.
he killed it.
She always did the cutting up and cleaning.
Yeah. And I pretty much, I think I could clean a chicken if I had to, you know.
Yeah.
I know not to break the gallbladder.
So what's rutamus?
It's rutabagas and potatoes boiled on a ham hock.
And then kind of mashed up
Was
together.
it turnips also? Or
It could be, but we didn't. Turnips are kind of strong.
So root vegetables and some meat
Yeah.
cooked like a stew, kind of.
Mhm.
Is it Swedish?
Yeah. And mashed up then. And you put the broth over the mousse or the mash.
Sounds good.
and homemade bread. We'd often have homemade coffee bread and rye bread.
Early.
I mean, didn't we have that other than just at holidays, or not?
Not too much. But Grandma Palmgren always made those things.
Vita rings.
And she always had homemade bread. She stored it in a large tin container with a lid under their kitchen table. And I never remember it being moldy. She'd make it every week or so. And we had a bread truck that came around sometimes.
That was big time.
And it was really exciting if the bread truck came.
And if we had money to buy something.
Yeah. But Dad did most of the shopping. He'd go to Molalla and shop. We were 4 miles from Molalla and 5 miles from the church in Colton. We shopped in Molalla and went to high school in Molalla, all of us.
So just individually here, what's some of your favorite memories of growing up?
I just liked, I just had such a feeling of freedom, of just roaming all over, and I loved horses, and we had a pony named Laddie, and there were other horses through the years. I had one called Silver Lady for a while that I broke, and then there was the neighbor man had a horse later on called Bronchi that we'd ride. And I was not an indoor person, so I was outside and drove teams a lot, helped with that, and you know, I was just the outside person. My dad's boy, I guess, since he never had any boys.
What you loved?
Yeah, I loved wading across the creek all summer. In spring, I would wade instead of going on the bridge. And just sitting down kind of by a marshy place or sitting around watching nature and picking flowers and talking to the horses.
Yes.
I'd converse with the horses. And Bev and I would go on rides with Bronchi and Laddie. But the camping experience was real big too.
We'd get free passes
For
to
the
the
rides.
rides. And Mr. Who was it that gave us caramel corn?
Manly, Mr. Manly.
gave us caramel corn every time we'd go by. I would feel so guilty because every time we'd go by, he'd here and give us a bag of caramel corn.
And if we traveled to other fairs, we'd go to Mr. Manly's and he'd give
We
us
just go
caramel.
by, and he'd insist.
How about you, Judy, for your memories?
I think getting the cows with my dogs.
Did you wade across the creek?
There was always a log falling.
Oh, yeah.
By the ford.
I guess,
Uh-huh.
you know, a narrower part,
Yeah.
just kind of down from your house.
So
But
you-
I'd always say we'd get across and then kind of up on the hill or the bank, and I'd say, Flip, get the cows, and he'd go get them. You know, we'd have to be in eyesight of them, and then he'd go nip at their heels and they'd come. But they wouldn't come automatically. We had to go get them.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
every night after school I'd do that.
so every morning and night you'd have to
I
get
didn't do it in the morning.
just at night.
No, I barely could get to school on time. What I mainly remember about the hill is running up as the late bell was ringing.
Yeah, we had an old-fashioned bell that they rang, like
Yeah.
church bells and
Are
school
you ever
bells.
late even today at all?
No, I'm better.
Are you better?
I'm in denial, actually. No, I've gone to acceptance.
You've embraced it? I'm late and I'm okay.
Right.
Our grandpa, Palmgren, the blacksmith, worked on big aircraft carriers in World War II in Portland, and they had a tiny little apartment and stayed there for several years during the war.
And I couldn't understand why our father didn't get a job in the shipyards and make some money, because we were still dirt poor.
I remember eating pancakes for days on end because that's all we had.
Like all day.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
3
except
meals.
I'd get to go eat at school, a
Yeah.
decent meal. I remember eating pancakes at supper and not having vegetables.
No.
Hmm.
And I don't know if you guys were around then, but it was a particularly bad time.
They'd
I
get
don't-
a little money from being at the legislature, but our mother actually made more as a secretary and clerk to a committee than our father did from his representative little stipend.
I think it was, as I remember, it was $3 a day when the legislature was in session. So that didn't pay for the gas money to get there. And they always, in the early years, they rented a place in Salem to stay during the session.
And since Dad knew people and all, it was just post-Depression, actually still, so he would get our Uncle Norman a job, or he would get Uncle Ben a job doing
And
things.
Gloria and Vivian.
Yeah. So he helped the whole family just kind of make it through with these little jobs during the session.
Okay, what
They call that
And I worked-
nepotism or something.
Yes.
And when I was 12, I worked during the whole session as a page.
Did you get paid?
Oh, yes, I made a lot more than Dad did.
I didn't know they paid pages.
Oh, yes.
but when was session? What months?
January, February, March.
And it was just every other year, wasn't it?
Really?
And
Yes.
so there'd be no pay in between, would there?
Yeah.
Not in the old days.
And when it was in session, where would you guys be?
We would stay when we were in school then with Ben and Ruth, who lived 2 miles down Milk Creek from us. And so we had to go 2 miles to school. Sometimes we'd walk. Sometimes someone would take us in a car, and sometimes Bev would ride me on the bike.
Once in a while, Uncle Ben he drove a road grader for the county, and sometimes we'd ride with him if he was going that way to work.
And so your Uncle Ben was your mother's brother or
Our father's brother,
father's brother?
one of his 3 brothers. And the 3 brothers married Ruth's, and the 4th brother, Reuben, married Lane.
And
the
their
sister
sister.
was named Ruth.
Yeah.
So you had 4 Ruths.
Ruth Ben, Ruth
5.
Herm, Ruth Milt, and Ruth Sis. And then my mother had one brother, Uncle Norm, who was married to Amida.
And a sister,
Esther.
Esther.
And she was married to Joe Fritz and had 4 children. He died young. He also worked in the shipyards, I think, scaling boilers, so it was a lung disease that killed him.
Okay, so just to review, your mom and dad's full names and the year they were born.
Well, Ruth Evelyn Palmgren Chindgren was born in 1906.
5.
So
And where was she born?
Inglewood, Colorado.
Okay, and your dad?
He was born December
5th or 2nd?
2nd,
2nd.
1890.
In Sweet Home.
Probably in Sweet Home, Nebraska.
Where the Chindgrens had come from Illinois, and they had a store there and lived across the street from the church, and they were doing very well, and they sold everything to come to Oregon and
Gambled on being a big farmer out here.
And they moved from Sweet Home or Illinois?
from Sweet Home.
Sweet Home, Nebraska. Any parting words?
We had bats in our belfry.
Yeah, there were bats in the old house.
In your house?
Yeah.
We had very high ceilings, and they'd come down through the cracks. Huge oak trees outside, and we had rope swings, and
And
we were all,
play Annie over on our house.
which was really high.
Had to have a good arm.
What's Annie over?
You'd throw a ball over and say Annie, Annie over, and then what would happen? They'd run around. If they caught it,
If they
they'd
had to
run
catch it.
around and
Tag you,
tag you, or
something.
hit you with the ball or something.
If they caught it on the fly.
So, and I guess we just trusted that they, you know, did that.
And Carolee and I, we had good neighbors, the Russells.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had the
Oh.
bean yard across the
And berries.
berries.
And I picked berries starting at 9 years old. Earned money.
And Judy and I picked berries together. And what was our berry boss's name? I can't remember.
It will come to me eventually, but maybe not in this conversation.
Anyway, she said, "Now, girls, quit giggling." And we picked beans, too. And I strung beans.
And we played with the Russell girls. Carolee and I did.
And I had a good friend, you know, after you guys were gone, Arlene Lesky, and we'd ride bikes, and I'd get in trouble often because I'd come home late. They'd be out searching. And we'd climb trees, and it's just a wonder where, you know, I have all my limbs and faculties to this day.
Oh yeah, we just ran wild in the woods and stuff, and with the neighbor girls.
For hours, we didn't
Yeah.
have to say, "Oh, Mom, I'll be back in an hour." We never knew when an hour was. We'd just go.
So you're kind of wild.
We were wild.
No,
No,
it
we-
was normal.
normal. Yeah, but it was normal, and you never. And it was just wonderful. You didn't worry about being out on the road riding a bike, except to look out for log trucks, and you didn't have to worry about being picked up or molested or anything. It just
The good old days,
well,
wasn't it?
yeah, it was. You didn't hear awful things happening to people like now. You know, your doors have to be locked, and
Yes,
you
we
don't pick
didn't lock.
anybody up.
We didn't lock our doors.
And we fed during the Depression. Our place was known as a good spot, and they would get bread and cheese and milk and whatever, you know.
And water. They
And
loved
water.
our water. No.
Had a
Who
good
would?
Who would? Yeah.
Oh, that
Bums.
bums. That they call them, but it was hard times, and people would just be walking around looking for work. And Dad would hire some.
Oh, and we had a man that lived in our garage, Bob Fitzgerald, and he also had a herd of horses in the pasture.
Race horses, harness race horses.
So, did it have just anything besides a bed in there?
No, it was just a bunch of stuff stored. There was room for the car and
His
Bob's.
bed was up on sawhorses, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
And did he eat with you, or?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
And he'd look after things when the folks were gone at the legislature and things like that.
His place, the place he lived at, bordered the Chindgren place. And he was kind of, down and out.
And he had relatives that took advantage of him.
Yeah.
He was a nice old guy.
But he only bathed
Once or
in the summertime in the creek.
Well, Mom would insist that Dad tell Bob to bathe, or she wouldn't let him in to eat, I think, because it got real bad, real offensive.
And he'd give him, Dad would give Bob socks and gloves for Christmas. So he'd have something new to put on. But he had a difficult life. He didn't join in our holiday things. He would sort of disappear. I don't know. He had relatives around somewhere, but
I think he was with them, but they weren't the giving type. They were more takers.
and then we'd stored loose hay in the hay mows, and we'd sleep up there sometimes. And then we'd tell stories about when the hobos used to go through and stop in our barns. So that was always an exciting thing to tell other people from other places, and when they were sleeping up there with us.
Wasn't there like a thrashing season or something? Because I remember that even.
Mm-hmm.
There'd be extra people there eating
Yeah.
big lunches.
Oh, yes.
Mom would cook really good stuff.
But what was
The-
was Dad farming then, or did he
Mhm.
hire it done? We had teasel and grain. Seems
he kind of leased out the land for them to grow teasel on it. And then Harry Lytle farmed part of it on shares because he had a tractor.
But we did a lot with horses and had hay, and they'd do the threshing up at the big red barn on the hill that's now fallen down. But those men, this couple of bachelors, they all cooperated. They would go to one farm and then another farm, just in the neighborhood, and help.
This is July 4th, 2004, in Sheridan, Oregon, with the Chindgren Sisters, Bev, Carolee, and Judy. Thank you.